Hello and welcome to Dave's Delights. I'm Dave, and as usual, it's a delight to have you here. Today we went out to the shore and I ran into a fish market there and got a whole bunch of really good stuff. So right now we're going to make a fried grouper sandwich with remoulade and my wife's favorite, fried green tomatoes. Now, because we want to get the flavors going, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the remoulade. Now, remoulade is basically a fancy mayo. It's really good as a dip and also as a layer to keep your sandwich from getting too moist from the fish and everything else, but also it adds some flavor to the game. So we're going to start off with 3/4 cup of mayonnaise. You can use any type you like, light mayo. This happens to be olive oil because that's the one that we use in the house. Brands don't matter, but I wouldn't use Miracle Whip because that has a whole different flavor to it, unless that's what you're looking for. But I would say real mayonnaise is what you're looking for here. So 3/4 cup of mayo. And then we have 1/4 cup of chopped dill pickle. And I have spears in the fridge, so I took that out and chopped it up. You could also certainly, if you could find it, dill pickle relish would work well as well, just for a substitute if you didn't want to do the knife work or if you didn't have any dill pickles any other way in your fridge. That goes in. And now we have 1 green onion, sliced up, kind of chopped. That's in that goes. 2 garlic cloves minced. Now I always keep this in the fridge. You can certainly use fresh garlic and mince it up, but for these kind of things, I like this pre-prepared. It's just I've gotten used to working with it over the years, and it's never really let me down. I'm gonna do 2 types of mustard here. We have a stone ground mustard, which is going to be 1 tablespoon. This is a Dijon stone ground, but you could certainly, if you had other types, you could use them as well. And then a spicy creole mustard. Now I'm living in New Jersey, so trying to find creole was difficult. So instead I have, because I have it, a pretty spicy German mustard, which is comes out of a tube, which should give me somewhere near that same type of having had remoulade before, that kind of heat. So that is another tablespoon of that, probably 2 tablespoons of that in. A tablespoon of Louisiana style hot sauce. Everybody's got their type. No big deal, pick the type you like. I have a favorite, but I'm not gonna tell you. But anyway, it's 1 tablespoon of that hot sauce. I'm going to try to stay out of the hot sauce wars. 1 teaspoon of lemon juice. Here's my squeezer. Look at that, that's about a teaspoon. And a 1/2 teaspoon of paprika. Now, this is regular paprika, not hot paprika, not smoked paprika. And then to finish it off, a little bit of cracked black pepper. I'm going to use my fancy thing today. And now we'll mix this up real nice. And it'll all come together and it'll start looking like a real thing rather than just being a conglomeration of stuff. It's not really looking like a sauce in a couple seconds here. Oh, it smells good already, I can tell you that. Oh yeah. Now, if you look at this, it needs a little bit of time to rest to get its flavors together. But you can see that is going to be real nice, and you can just spread that right on the roll with the sandwich, and it'll dip well with the fried green tomatoes. And we're going to let this sit for at least 10 minutes, and then it'll be ready to roll when it's time. And we're going to get back to you with how to do the fried foods. Hello and welcome back. So we are now prepped out to do our prep for our frying of the fried green tomatoes and the fish fillets. Now we have up here first, I have a garden full of tomatoes, and occasionally we'll get ones where the vine comes down or whatever, or just quite frankly, my wife loves fried green tomatoes, so we'll pick them green. This one fell off the vine, and is a little bit small, but I have a nice selection of ones that I've pre-sliced that are better size, and they're what you're looking for. So it looks almost like a full-size tomato, but it hasn't turned red yet. And then we're going to take those and we're going to put them through flour and then an egg dredge, and into Italian breadcrumbs, and we'll set them aside so that they are ready for frying. Now I have to scramble the eggs, and I like using a chopstick. You beat the egg so that it will create something for that to stick to. So you take your tomato, you dredge it. Now remember, clean hands, because this is definitely a hands job. Knock off the excess, give it a drop into the egg mix, and then pop. I drop that into my breadcrumbs. And as you can see, I'm covering it. Maybe I'll give it a little shake too. And I'll use my dry hand to maneuver this one, which will then go onto my tray for later. We drop with a wet hand into the flour, get some pretty decent coverage, as you can see. That goes down into the egg wash, or just really beaten egg, and you drop that into your breadcrumbs. I take my dry hand, I'll put some on top, and I give it a little shake, give it a flip, and what comes out is nice and breaded, but not so heavy. I'm not trying to make this like beer batter. I'll do one more here. There's my flour. Here comes my egg. Into the breadcrumbs, and make those breadcrumbs rain from heaven. Give the tray a shake, give it a flip, just make sure it's all covered, and you have a fried green tomato ready to be fried. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to process the rest of these up, and then we'll come back when I'm ready to to do the fish. Okay, well that is all of the fried green tomatoes. They are ready to go, and now it's time to talk about the fish. Now, if you're making a fried fish sandwich, this happens to be grouper, which my parents live in Florida, my uncle lives in Florida, and the grouper sandwich is just a lunchtime special that I just absolutely love. So when my fish market has grouper in stock, I try to get it every time. Now, it should look it should be fresh, it shouldn't smell, it should have nice color, it should be firm. And as long as it's all those things, I cut the fillet into sandwich sizes, and then I'm gonna give it a light breading with light dredging and flour, then the same scrambled egg, like a beaten egg mixture, and then I'm gonna do panko breading on this one. I mean, you can do a bunch of different ways. You can just do the dredge, you can beer batter it, but this time I'm gonna do panko breadcrumbs with Old Bay. So it's a 1.5 cups of panko breadcrumbs, not so much because you need that 1.5 cups, but you need to have enough around to be able to get the thing covered. I've lived in Maryland for the last 18 years until I just moved here to New Jersey, so I have 2 tablespoons of Old Bay in here for some extra flavoring. And then we're gonna take these and go through that same process with the 3 pieces of fish. So, you take the fish, and I've patted this dry, but it's still fish, it's still meat, so it's going to be moist enough to pick up the flour dredge, and then it's going to go into the egg, and then into my breadcrumb pan, where I'm going to really get it covered, using my dry hand for that. Now that I got a good coating on it, as you can see, that's going to go over on my plate. And we'll move on to the next one. Get you with the flour. And this is, you're going to make a mess of your table. Not a big deal. We can clean that up. Everything cleans up. Into the egg. Flatten out your breadcrumbs. Into the crumb. Crumb up on top. Really shake that on, and then you give it a shake, give it a flip, make sure, and you see you got your club hand here, so that's why I want to use a dry hand and a wet hand. Remember, wash your hands. And the last piece of fish. breaded in the egg. Looking nice and eggy. Into the breadcrumbs. Give it a shake. Grab my crumb up and over the top. Flip it around. A little bit of leftover egg there falling off, no problem. And these are now ready to go to the fryer. So I'm gonna get this cleaned up and we're gonna move over to the fryer in a second. See you then. Hello, welcome back. We're now ready to fry. I've got vegetable oil in, and I use a Lodge pan, but I like a nice piece of cast iron for when I'm doing my frying. And I use this to get myself to about 350 degrees before I start to fry, because I found you don't want it to be too low, because that allows the oil to get inside and then your food becomes really greasy. So now that the pan's hot, I'm going to put the food in. I'm going to start with the fried green tomatoes. They're going to go in. Once they turn brown, I flip them. Once they've flipped and they're looking brown and good on the other side, they're going to come to my drying rack. And once I'm done with the tomatoes, then I'm going to put the fish in. One, because I want the fish to be a little bit warmer, and I want that to come out last. Two, I don't want my tomatoes to taste like fried fish. So I use fresh oil for this. Sometimes you can reuse it another time, but unless you're going to want to have flavors of the last thing you fried, if you can, go with fresh. I'm also going to turn on the ultra industrial fan, so that way I don't smoke my house out. So we're not going to be doing too much talking here. It's going to be action. And here we go. And you want to put a bunch in, but you don't want to crowd the pan either. And we're watching them go. Make sure they're not stuck to the bottom. And this is pretty hot oil, so they will fry up pretty quick. These are not thick. Once they start looking golden brown, I give them a flip. And a tool that I got from an Asian market, I've got this, which is designed for getting stuff out of frying oil. I may not put my hand underneath the hot oil that's dripping off, but as you can see, that's what we're looking for. Nicely golden brown and not burnt. Once they're ready, you got to get going. You don't want to wait too long, because you can overcook these guys in a heartbeat. Here comes my last batch of tomatoes. Now, if you've been making a lot of stuff in this oil, you may have to get it to go, or there's been a lot of bigger pieces in there, that can drop the temperature. So when you're done frying one thing, before you put the next one in, sometimes you want to do a check. But these tomatoes are so thin, I wasn't worried about them the oil getting too cool. But if I was doing large pieces, then yes, I would do a check before I put the next thing in to make sure that the oil was back up the temperature. And you can regulate, if it looks like it's starting to smoke, you can turn your heat down, and the actual cast iron itself will help keep the heat for you. These are browning up nice. Give them a flip. You see how quick this is. And if you cut the tomatoes nice and thin, they'll be fast. Now, if you like a thick, chunky fried tomato, no problem. You just might have to let it go a little bit longer. All right. Here we go. Now before I do the fried fish, I am going to check. Oh yeah, I'm actually going to turn it down a little bit. It's getting closer to 400, 425. Now, remember, there's moisture in all this, so you don't want to just splash it in. You do not want to get this lot of hot oil on it. So ease it into place. And if you got room, ease a second one, but don't crowd this pan. Perfect. And look at that bubble. Let me turn that back a little bit. There we go. Now it's the same thing. We're looking for this to cook until it turns golden brown. I'm just going to make sure it's not stuck to the bottom of the pan, which it is not. And you know, probably maybe a minute and a half on each side here. It all depends. This oil is pretty hot, and this piece of fish isn't super thick, so you got to do it by eye. When it's golden brown, now this you got to be careful. I'm going to give it a little flip. I like using the side of the pan to make it happen. And my other piece of fish, flip. And now I'm going to let this cook for about a minute. I will get back to you when we're getting ready to plate. All right, welcome back. Now we are going to do our last step, which is we're going to lightly fry the bread. I'm going to use this grill pan to brown and just kind of toast up the bottom of this, the bottom of each of these pieces of bread, so that it doesn't get too soggy. And also, it's going to be a nice texture for us too. So I've taken a pat of butter and I'm on decently warm heat. And you've done this before with bread. Just get it down there and just get it to brown a little bit. Doesn't require much. It doesn't require much work. Just it will do it all by itself. And you'll take a look. See, it's already starting to fry a little bit. And with this bread, having this being like a homemade kind of country garlic bread, it's got all kinds of nooks and crannies, so it's not going to have an even browning, but it will start looking like that. Okay. About 5 more seconds and we are ready to go here. Looking good, looking good, looking good. Okay, so this is now ready to be assembled. Welcome back. Now we're going to put our sandwich and our lunch together. So I need to take my bread, which you can see is nicely browned, and I'm going to get some of that remoulade. And we're going to just slide that on there. Nice little coating. Don't have to go nuts with it. There's gonna be a whole container of it as dipping sauce to go with the fried green tomatoes. So if somebody wants extra, it's already gonna be there on the plate. There's the bottom. Here's the top. Look at that. It smells really good. This whole thing smells really good. Now I'm gonna take one of my pieces of fish. That goes on. And then I'm gonna put a couple slices of tomato. A little bit of lettuce, whatever you have. I happen to have field greens that I keep around the house. Early spring I'll have iceberg, but this time of year my garden's already cleaned out of that. and we prefer field greens for our general eating purposes. So now I'm gonna close that sandwich. Looks pretty good, I think. And then I gotta get some fried green tomatoes and a thing of dipping sauce for that. Get a couple more of those. Now, they're not really fried green tomatoes unless you've put some salt on them. Now, you want to have crushed, kind of cracked salt at that point so it gets into the grooves rather than a big chunk of kosher salt. So I know this is Himalayan. The flavor's still gonna be good. What you could do instead of this, if you don't have one of my super fancy, salt mills, is you can take a mortar and pestle or just a hammer on the countertop and beat your salt up to get it into kind of more powdery, and that'll go on top of your fried green tomatoes. Now finally, because what is a clam bake or a seafood lunch without some Ipswich clams? These are something we eat all the time from where I grew up in New England, and I cook these. All I do is I steam them for 12 minutes. You take the clam, steaming water, and then you steam them up, and you put some of these on the plate. And I've got drawn butter, which is going to be on the side of that, right here, and that makes a pretty full meal. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this, and I hope you enjoy this. I know I will. Until I see you next time, remember, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you have any comments, I would be happy to see them. Let me know what you might like me to cook. See you all next time. Have a good evening.